when people ask me, is Social Security going to be there when I retire? The answer is yes. Worst case is it's going to be 20% less than what you thought it was going to be, but it's going to be there. Welcome to another episode of the Simply Retirement Podcast, where we want to educate and empower women to live your retirement on your terms. I'm your host, Eric Blake, practicing retirement planner for over 25 years, founder of Blake Wealth Management, and I would not be the man I am today without the women in my life. Joining me again today is Wendy McConnell. Wendy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing very well. And I'm really interested in your feedback on this topic. Once again, it's actually, as we've done different episodes on Social Security, it's actually a question you've brought up a couple of times as we were talking about this. So today's conversation is going to be focused on the future of Social Security.
Okay.
So is it going to be there or not? That's the big question, right?
That's always my concern.
But we're going to talk about the current status of the trust fund, what the latest trustees report actually says. What are some of the potential reform options that could be out there, possible timing of congressional action, and most importantly, what it means for our audience. And as we're recording this episode, I'm actually preparing to host a webinar later today. It's actually about an hour from now, called What's New with Social Security in 2026. And almost every time I speak on this topic, whether it's a webinar, a client meeting, the podcast, again, the same question comes up. What's going to happen with Social Security? And that's really what inspired today's episode. And of course, it won't likely not the last time we talk about this topic because the numbers update every year. But since I've been reviewing this information in the preparation for the webinar, I thought it was a good time to address it. And again, since this episode will actually be released a few weeks from now, after the webinar takes place, we'll be sure to share a link to that recording in the show notes if anybody would be interested in checking that out.
Okay. Busy day for you, huh?
Busy day today. Absolutely. And hopefully, again, by the end of the episode, what I'm hoping is that we can provide a clear understanding of what's actually happening, a realistic view of what some of the potential changes are, and again, practical planning steps that you can take.
Okay.
And we're going to be sharing, again, the link to the webinar. We'll share a link to the trustees report, all that fun stuff on the simplyretirementpodcast.com.
All right.
All right, so let's talk about what the trustee report actually says. So this is a report that's released every June and is basically what is the health of the Social Security system. And June 2025 is the most recent report, but it reflects the numbers from 2024. So just kind of set some time perspective. But here's basically what it showed. It showed the combined trust fund had about $2.788 trillion at the end of 2023. By the end of 2024, it had declined to 2.721 trillion. Total income in 2024 is approximately 1.418 trillion. Total expenditures, the money leaving the fund, 1.485 trillion, which bottom line results in a net decrease of about $67 billion. So in simple terms, the system is paying out more than it's bringing in.
Still.
Yeah. And that is the issue. That's not going to change anytime soon. So if no changes are made, the combined trust fund is projected to be depleted in 2034.
Okay.
Now, here's the key points. If this happens, benefits are not going to go to zero. If ongoing payroll taxes, with the payroll taxes coming into the system and what's being paid out, it would still be scheduled to fund about 81% of scheduled benefits, which simply means that's a reduction, not an elimination.
Okay.
Now, I'm actually going to include the full trustees report in the show notes. However, unlike a self-proclaimed Social Security nerd like me, I don't expect you to read the whole thing. It's a very thorough, very, very thorough document. So we will share the link just so you kind of see what it's all about. But again, I think one of the things that I want to stress is that actually we know for women that are near or in retirement, Social Security is one of those foundational pieces of the retirement puzzle. And I think that understanding the numbers, not necessarily memorizing them, but just having just more clarity around what's actually happening. And if you are in or near retirement, history suggests that your benefits are much less likely to be impacted, assuming Congress actually does something in time. Now, your children, your grandchildren may not be so lucky, but that distinction really does matter. So I also want to share just a little bit about what might actually fix the problem as we get closer to this 2034 deadline.
Okay. So, but what I picked up from what you said is that there might be a 19% reduction because you said 81% and that, right. Is that what you meant?
Absolutely. The way to take that, the way I want you to interpret that is that the system is not going to go to zero.
Right.
Right. So by the time we get to 2034, if nothing has been done to fix the problem, they would cut benefits by projected 19%, just round it to 20, cut benefits by 20%, and that solves the problem.
Okay.
Now, nobody wants that. But I think the point is that's one of the questions you get is if it goes to zero, am I going to get Social Security benefits at all? That's what most people are worried about. Ultimately, the answer is going to be yes. If nothing gets fixed, think about, for planning purposes, say, hey, well, I would need to plan on a 20% reduction for what my current estimate says. Does that make more sense?
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
So as we think about what it could take to potentially restore the solvency of the Social Security system, there's really what I would call 4 key areas to think about. Now, what these end up being part of the solution, who knows? But just to kind of give some perspective around what could happen. The first thing is they could increase the maximum Social Security earnings subject to Social Security tax. So as an example, in 2026, the maximum earnings subject to Social Security payroll tax is $184,500. So income above that is not taxed for Social Security purposes, right? So one option might be to raise that cap. Another might be to eliminate it altogether.
Well, and may I chime in for 1 second?
Absolutely.
I mean, the theory and the reason that they had that cutoff to begin with is because there was an assumption that they wouldn't claim Social Security after a certain amount.
Not to say so. It's basically the leveling of the system. So we talked about this on, I completely drawn a blank on which episode this was, but what are called these bend points. So how do you determine how much of your income is going to get replaced by Social Security? And so these are ultimately where these limits are coming in, is to drive the fact that if you're a lower income earner, Social Security is designed to replace a higher percentage of your income.
Okay.
So there's basically cap. That's part of this is why saying, okay, if I earn $250,000 or $300,000, they're not going to base my Social Security earnings or my Social Security benefit off of that bigger number, right? So there's basically a cap. There's a maximum Social Security benefit anybody can receive. And so that's where some of these limits will come into play.
So they're trying to make it fair by saying you'll never get more than this in Social Security, so you don't have to pay after this amount in salary.
Right.
Okay. Even though they probably can afford it.
That's a whole nother conversation. Well, but by comparison, so think about Medicare tax. So there is no cap on Medicare tax. So it doesn't matter how much money you earn, you pay Medicare tax on every dollar.
Okay.
So Security is different.
All right.
So that's where it's not, not out of the question that might be something to think about. Again, whether it's just raising the cap higher or eliminating the cap altogether. And actually that increases revenue without directly reducing benefits. And again, that's going to primarily impact higher earners, not retirees. So that's one possibility. Second thing is, and this is where most people have a little bit more familiarity, and that is, could they raise the full retirement age? So currently, full retirement age is 67 for those that are born in 1960 or later. In 1983, the last time we were facing these challenges, that was when they raised the retirement age from 65 to 67, gradually over that next 40-year period. So if retirement age were raised again, history would at least suggest it would be likely to be phased in slowly and affect younger workers more than people who are closer to that Social Security age. Those that may already be in or near retirement historically have been protected in these circumstances. Hey everyone, it's Eric. Hope you're enjoying today's episode. I want to take just a quick moment to share a resource I think you'll find valuable. Have you ever found yourself asking, how much can I put into an IRA this year? Or how much can I earn before my Social Security gets reduced? Those are the kinds of questions that come up all the time, and the answers change often more than you'd think. That's why we created a free 2-page tax and retirement planning cheat sheet, updated for 2026, with the key tax, Social Security, and retirement numbers all in one place. You can download it right now at the simplyretirementpodcast.com/retirement cheat sheet. It's a simple reference you can keep handy whenever questions come up. Now, back to the episode. Next thing, they could actually adjust the benefit growth formula. So how are we determining increased benefits, whether we're talking cost of living increases or we're talking about wage growth? And that's one we had done a podcast on back on episode 87, where we talked about how your benefit increases both in your working years and in your retirement years. And that's really where we want to think about how could these formulas be changed? Could they adapt to longer life expectancy and things like that? So during working years, your earnings are indexed to a wage growth. But once you're receiving benefits, you receive what's called the annual cost of living adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
Some proposals suggest tying future benefit growth more closely to inflation rather than wages. But that would actually result in a slower projected growth, again, impacting younger workers more.
Okay.
Then we get to modifying the cost of living adjustments. So another proposal is modifying how that cost of living adjustment is calculated. And again, here's where I'll kind of share my opinion. This is one of those that may likely get less pushback than it probably should. Because many people think, well, as long as my current benefit doesn't go down or doesn't get reduced, I'm fine with slightly smaller increases in the future. But even those smaller reductions in annual increases, those compound over time. So if you think about the next 15, 20 years, that could mean a significant loss in purchasing power. And again, as we know for our audience, as many women who may live into their 80s or 90s, purchasing power really does matter. And I think that's where retirement planning, thinking about it in terms of decades, not just a single year, becomes so critical.
Okay.
Again, back to one of the points I talked about earlier, and I think this is the term grandfathering and what this actually means. Because again, the last time we faced a scenario like this was back in 1983. And at that point, when they made the adjustment to extending the retirement age to 67, individuals are receiving benefits, and many that were close to retirement were largely protected. So the changes were phased in for younger workers. So hopefully this historical pattern provides some context as to why I often talk about the fact that if you're very near retirement age, again, this doesn't guarantee anything, but hopefully for some perspective that if you are near retirement age or you're near Social Security eligibility, you're very much less likely to get impacted than somebody who might today be in their 20s or 30s.
Based on the past.
Based on the past.
Right.
Because the last time you think about, again, we're very dependent on Congress doing something here, right? So historically, reform happens when urgency increases.
Right.
So while the projected depletion year is 2034, actually that means because benefits aren't technically in danger today, that reduces the pressure for immediate action. And so again, thinking about the last time this situation occurred, it was within months of the same scenario of the system going dry, right?
It was months.
Months, yes.
Oh,
yeah,
that is very disturbing.
It is, yeah. I think again, having some reliance on thinking positively, we'll call it that.
Okay.
That something will get done. But I think that's where, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more, is thinking about what can you do. It may be some people that just want to take the most conservative approach and say, yes, I'm just going to plan on a 20% reduction. Nobody wants that. But how confident do you want to be? How confident do you want to be in your plan? I think if you're close to retirement age now, you should probably feel relatively confident that your benefits won't get impacted, because I do think something will get done. We just don't necessarily know what yet. But I don't think there's anything wrong with younger workers saying, hey, I'm just going to maybe I don't plan on Social Security in my plan. I always kind of use this, the icing on the cakes thought process, where I got to build my cake. I'm going to make my cake as good as possible. And if Social Security is there, it just puts the icing on top of the cake. So I think you just got to think about what would make you sleep better at night. Obviously, we know that the thought that Social Security could get reduced or eliminated or whatever the case, whatever your worry might be, doesn't necessarily make you feel more confident.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I think it really comes down to the planning. And I think hopefully that's where planning, hopefully being thoughtful, not emotional when it comes to building your plan around what the future of Social Security might hold.
Okay.
So let's talk about a little bit what you could do. And that's obviously the practical question is, what should you do now? And I think if you're in or near retirement and you feel the urge to do something, the answer is not to make a reactive claiming decision. Not just say, hey, well, I'm just going to start it now as soon as possible because it may not be there down the road.
Right.
I still think you need to think about reviewing what your benefit estimates are, making sure your earnings records are accurate, coordinating your Social Security and your tax strategies, but ultimately, how do we make all this still fit in your overall income plan?
And if you're married, again, do we have somebody wait? Do we have you both claim as early as you can? So these are all things that you would have to determine.
Right. And I don't think that part of the conversation doesn't really change in terms of looking at Again, as you said, the higher earner delaying their benefits as long as reasonably possible to maximize both the income while you're alive, but also the potential survivor benefit. So a lot of those things don't necessarily change. I think the change is what am I going to use as my estimated benefit? Am I going to say, hey, let's take a more conservative approach and say, I'm just going to plan on a 20% lower benefit than what my statement currently says? That is the more conservative approach.
Okay.
I think that if you're in this stage where you're very near retirement, a dramatic benefit reduction is probably unlikely, and that you should still really follow the process of how is Social Security going to fit in my overall plan. Now, that's the other part of the conversation is how big of a piece is that Social Security puzzle, or the piece of that puzzle, and whether or not you should say, hey, I'm going to build everything around that. Again, kind of the icing on the cake strategy. If that's my biggest source of income, you're probably going to be a little bit more stressed about the future of Social Security. So again, when we think about more conservative planning, if you are in your 20s and 30s, I think it does make sense to build some margin of safety into your plan. And again, even if you're in your 50s or 60s, you might simply prefer that more conservative approach. And where we think about stress testing our plan, assuming a 20% reduction in benefit, what would that do? What would be the projections of my plan if I made that assumption? Right? And that mirrors that approximate 81% funding projection if nothing gets done. Because if the reduction does happen, it never happens, then that puts you ahead. And if it does happen, you're prepared.
Very true.
And again, if you're in your 20s and 30s, I think encouraging whether it's your children, your grandchildren, something is going to change. I mean, that is the bottom line. Something's going to have to get done. We just don't know what that change is going to be yet. So I do think for younger generations, a reasonable minimum assumption might be to say, hey, I need to plan on my benefit, my full retirement age being 70 or some reduced benefit, or build your plan around not heavily relying on Social Security at all. And again, really it's your personal, what do you feel like is the best decision for you, right? But if you assume benefits begin at 70 and possibly at a reduced level, you're building some resilience into your planning, into your retirement strategy.
Okay.
Now, if you do that, obviously that means there's certain things you're going to have to make a decision you're going to be more active with. So does that mean I'm going to have to save more? Am I going to have to plan to live on less? Am I going to have to work longer? Am I going to have to adapt or adjust my investment strategy? Most likely it's some combination of those. And that's really what retirement planning is thinking about which levers can I pull? And it's about, sometimes it's just more about the little small intentional adjustments that you have to make where you're just giving yourself a little bit more clarity and building flexibility into your plan. And I think that flexibility ultimately can lead to more confidence.
Gotcha.
All right. So just to recap a couple of the key points here. So the Social Security Trustees Report is released each June. The most recent report showed that the trust projected to face depletion by 2034, but ongoing payroll taxes would still fund about 80%. We'll use the number 81%, so it would still be able to pay 81% of the scheduled benefits.
For how long?
That would then reestablish the fund itself. So that would be the solution.
Got you. Okay.
So we talk about that is a worst case solution. They cut benefits by about 20%. That solves the problem.
I got you.
That causes a lot of other problems.
It sure does.
But it does solve the problem. And that's why I say when people ask me, is Social Security going to be there when I retire? The answer is yes. Worst case is it's going to be 20% less than what you thought it was going to be, but it's going to be there. And that's why I say, again, if you're more of a conservative planner, build that into your plan. And that means if you want to maintain the same lifestyle, where am I going to get that additional income? Does that mean I need to save more? I need to work a little bit longer. Whatever that decision is, make it based on an educated decision and not an emotional response to, well, I don't think Social Security is going to be there at all. Right?
Okay.
Again, we talked about this historically when Congress has acted, changes have been made. They've been phased in gradually and have tended to protect those that are already receiving benefits or that are close to retirement. So I think it's important to think about that. If you are in or near retirement, your focus should be on coordinating Social Security with your overall income and tax strategy. Again, not reacting emotionally to these headlines. And if you do prefer a more conservative approach, or if you're advising your younger generations, consider stress testing your plan with that potential 20% reduction, or assuming benefits might not actually start until age 70, which then dictates an adjustment to your savings, your spending, your retirement timing. All those things will need to be accordingly adjusted.
Okay.
And I think the big thing is just don't base your planning on what Congress is going to do, right? Make an educated decision and figure out what you feel most comfortable with, what's the right approach for you, and then building some flexibility into your future planning.
Well, the last plan didn't work out very well because here we are, how many years later, 40 years later, we've got the same exact problem again, right?
And I think, unfortunately, that's where obviously we've got politicians in the mix, and they're trying to make decisions on what they think is best for others, and obviously everybody's got their opinion about what that means. It's a situation where, again, there is the human element in terms of looking at the generations. A big problem is just the fact that we've got so many baby boomers now starting benefits. So we got this big generation who are starting to receive benefits, and we don't have enough people paying into the system. So that is naturally going to create an issue. Now, as always, because we're relying on politicians to make these decisions and Congress to act on this, unfortunately, just like with many situations, they're not going to act until they just absolutely have to. And so that's where I think the big challenge is, or the big fear comes in.
Well, but that's, so these options that you've discussed today, who's putting these options out there? Who's talking about this? Like, are we even trying to come up with a solution, or are we going to wait until 6 months before it runs out? I mean, I know you don't know the answer, but
they're going to wait till 6 months out.
Okay.
That's like,
all right.
All right. So these are things that are out there that are being discussed as potential actionable solutions, or some combination of these.
Okay.
But actually, if you think about, depending on which side of the fence you fall on, we're talking about, again, increasing taxes, increasing payroll taxes. Does anybody really want that? Again, if you're talking about increasing the retirement age from 67 to 70, does anybody really want that?
No.
Right. So nobody really wants any of these. That's why it's going to be a last minute decision on Congress acting, and whatever trade-offs have to be incorporated into all that, of course. But that's where the challenge comes in, is nobody really wants to everybody wants a solution, but nobody wants to act to get to the solution.
I have a solution.
What's your
solution? We
solution?
get together all of the Congress people and politicians who are retiring, and they come up with a solution, because then they're not going to worry about if people like them or not.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation. I think the best thing we can do is try to be as optimistic as possible. Build your plan around what you feel is most comfortable for you, and just don't stood around and stress about it. Right? I think that's it's as hard as that is to do. It's easier to say than it is to do. But if you really feel like you need to do something, build your plan around what you have influence over, what you can control. I think that's the biggest thing I could say to take away from it.
Okay.
As always, thank you for tuning in. Thank you to Wendy for being here with me once again. If you would like help stress testing your retirement plan, whether that means evaluating that 20% reduction assumption, modeling a delayed age of 70 to start, or just simply understanding how Social Security fits into your broader income strategy, you can visit getmysimplyretirementroadmap.com to schedule a conversation with our team. Again, I think the biggest thing is taking away from this conversation that because retirement planning is not about guessing what Congress will do, it's really just about building a plan that could work either way, building flexibility into your plan. That is it for today's episode. Again, for all the links and resources mentioned today, including the webinar recording and the trustees report, you can visit the simplyretirementpodcast.com. Don't forget to like, follow, and share our show. And until next time, please remember, retirement is not the end of the road. It's the start of a new journey.
That's it for today's episode of the Simply Retirement Podcast. We hope you found our insights and advice helpful in planning for a fulfilling retirement. Don't forget to take action on what you've learned today. Visit our website at blakewealthmanagement.com to learn more about our firm and review our Simply Retirement Roadmap process to get you on the right path to the retirement you deserve. And don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and we look forward to helping you achieve your retirement goals. Remember, retirement is not the end of the road. It is the start of a new journey. So embrace it and make the most of it. Until next time, take care. Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security, or engage in any specific trading strategy. Results will vary. Past performance is no indication of future results or success. Market conditions change continuously. This commentary reflects the personal opinions, viewpoints, and analyses of Blake Wealth Management. It does not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, their clients, or their employees. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by Blake Wealth Management or RFG Advisory, or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, a registered investment advisor, Blake Wealth Management, and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place.